What are we getting wrong about motivation?
So much. The biggest mistake we make with motivation is that we try to increase it. This is what stuckness is. It's a lot of irrelevant movement.
We do use the word, I feel stuck, but you're saying that's actually the wrong word and it's inaccurate.
Yes, it's not that you have no motivation. It's that you have a very powerful motivation to not move. What's better, for you to be in control of your wants or for your wants to be in control of you?
Oh,
That's the question.
ooh. Like now I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling like you're pinning me to the wall, Dr. K. I don't know. Hey, it's your friend Mel, and I am so thrilled to be able to introduce you to Dr. Alok Kanogia, also known as Dr. K. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because he is now back on the Mel Robbins podcast. You loved him when he first appeared several months ago. Dr. K is a Harvard-trained psychiatrist specializing in modern mental health and the impact that technology is having on your brain. And what I love about Dr. K is, well, there's a lot of things I love about him. I love how he explains these really heady topics. And I also love the fact that he has a super impressive and diverse skill set. First of all, he did his medical and psychiatric training here in Boston at Harvard. And he's also been studying integrative health and Ayurvedic mental health for over 20 years. He's the co-founder of Healthy Gamer, which is a huge mental health platform and training company. They've got over 175 employees who are dedicated to helping people overcome addictions to technology. And they also train clinicians in Dr. K's methodology. His YouTube channel, Healthy Gamer GG, has over 2 million followers, and he's the author of the new book, How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. And today, Dr. K is here to talk about all things motivation, dopamine, and tapping back into that power that you have to get where you want to go in your life. Dr. K, welcome back to the Mel Robbins podcast. Could you tell the person listening how their life might change if they take everything that you're about to share with them to heart?
I think the way that they live life would be very different, and I think their outcomes in life would also change immensely. So I think the basic thing to keep in mind is that we don't learn how we work. We have a fundamental educational system that teaches us mathematics, history, marketing, finance, but no one teaches you this is how your mind works, this is where desires come from, this is how you get motivated. And we assume that there's no formal education in this, but there absolutely is a formal education in this. And once we sort of dig into that, like what I tend to find with the patients that I work with, people who watch my lectures and stuff like that, is we just teach them how they work. And once you understand how you work, once you understand the buttons of the controller that is you, then you can direct your character in life wherever you want to go.
I am so freaking excited. So we're basically going to get a master class from you in understanding how to unlock our internal drivers, right? Is that what you're basically
among
saying?
other things? Sure.
You are known, Dr. K, online as the authority to help people unlock their motivation, to help them unlock more meaning in their life. But you have a really cool backstory for how you got into this field of work. Could you just tell me a little bit about like your story?
Yes. So my parents moved here from India. I'm the child of immigrants. I was born in the United States. Both of my parents were doctors. So growing up, I was supposed to be a doctor and really didn't have my heart in it. So I wasn't motivated. Basically failed out of college. Like I had less than a 2.0 GPA after my first year of college, was on academic probation.
Well, did you just not go to class? Like a less than a 2.0, that actually takes some work
It
to not
does.
do that.
Yeah. So
right?
I was very addicted to video games.
Oh.
And so like played a bunch of games, basically failed out of college, would play for 16, 18, 20 hours a day. And then my parents like tried everything. So they tried like punishment. They tried like, being very like supportive, and they just didn't know what to do because I mean, even today, we don't quite understand how technology affects our brains, and it affects us so profoundly. So after about 2 years, my dad said, you got to go to India. And I went to an ashram, which is like a monastery, and I stayed there for 3 months and decided to become a monk at the age of 21. My teachers told me that I was too young. They told me, you need to go back to school, you need to get a doctoral degree, and then you can take your vows at 30. And that too was like, I was like, I want to give up my life. And one of my teachers was like, you don't have anything worth giving up. So if you want to become a monk, you have to go build something in the world and then give it up. Like rise to the top of your profession, get a doctoral degree at a minimum, and then give it up if you want to give it. But right now you're running away. You're escaping. There's nothing worth giving up.
Boy, those monks know how to just drop a bomb on you, don't they?
Yeah, they really do. So they ended up sending me back. So I would travel for about back and forth for about 7 years and learn more advanced practices and stuff like that. Ended up meeting my wife. So it turns out my teachers were very wise. So the whole monk thing was not going to work out. And then decided to go to med school, partially because she wanted to be married to a doctor. And my teachers had said, you have to get some kind of doctoral degree. So I was like, why not medicine?
That seems like a big commitment to try to impress somebody that you're dating. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'll go to medical school if you like me.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because that's how it would seem, right? So
Right.
we have all these ideas about, you shouldn't craft your life based on someone else's preferences and stuff like that. But I think it's, if you're internally okay with it, I knew I had to get some kind of doctorate degree. I'm very interested in how human beings work. That's what I loved about India. So what I learned in India is like, this is how a human being works from the inside, not research, but like so the challenge with scientific research is that it's hard to apply to an individual. What I love about sort of this Eastern perspective on spirituality, it's like desires. I mean, if I tell you your desire comes from the nucleus accumbens, you can't do anything with that.
I would be like, what? It comes from the nucleus humma?
Exactly, right? So there's some neurotransmitter floating around in your brain, but it's not actionable information.
Yes.
So what I learned in India was an actionable way to change myself. And then came back, graduated with a 2.5 GPA after like 5.5 years of undergrad. And then it took me about 3 years to get into med school. I got rejected from 120 med schools.
120 med schools you applied to?
Over the course of 3 years, yeah, like 40 a year.
Wow. And you kept going though?
Yes.
Huh.
Absolutely. So that's speaking of motivation, right? So
Yes.
I think when your motivation comes from the right place, then you are impervious to the circumstances around you affecting your motivation.
Oh, whoa. Okay. I know we're going to dig deep into that, but I want to make sure as you're listening to Dr. K, you really just got what he just said. When the motivation comes from the right place, you're impervious to all the external things that are going on.
Absolutely, 100%. So ended up, getting rejected a lot. After 2 years of applying to med school and not getting in, people in my family were like, hey, maybe you should think about something else. Like, this is, your GPA is set in stone, right? But I said, I'm going to go ahead and do this again. Ended up getting into med school, went to Tufts for med school, and then also had decided to do psychiatry. So originally I was going to do like holistic cancer treatment. So I had studied a lot of Indian medicine in India and alternative medicine, yoga, meditation, all that good stuff. But did psychiatry because my favorite organ was the mind, and really noticed a lack in the West of our understanding of the mind. Because we do things based on population-based studies, right? So we can say motivation comes from this part of the brain, but as a human being, how do you take that fact and apply it to your life? That is what was missing for me, or not, what I saw was missing in the field.
Yeah.
So ended up doing my psychiatry training at Harvard, down the street at Mass General Hospital and McLean Hospital. Was an awesome experience. And then a couple years in, I had this kind of like, I had a pretty large group of people coming to me wanting like holistic mental health treatment. So how can I conquer this depression or anxiety or narcissism or sociopathy? Worked with a lot of CEOs and kind of high performers in like finance and places like that. And then I realized that there's like no shortage of people trying to help this group of people, right? People who can pay a lot of money for like really high quality support and to really unlock their potential or maximize their potential or whatever. But there were a bunch of people who no one was helping. And those are the degenerate gamers. These are like the 22-year-olds who finish college and never get a job. These are people who drop out of college. These are people who are 25 years old living in their parents' basement and like no one's helping them. They can't pay anything. So I started streaming on Twitch and doing mental health content on Twitch, and was stunned when we became the fastest growing stream on Twitch for a period of about 3 months.
Wow. So for the person listening who does not know what Twitch is, could you kind of explain what you mean when you're giving mental health content on Twitch?
Yeah, so Twitch is a live streaming platform that usually streams games.
Yep.
So what I noticed is that in my office, I was having gamers come in, And I was like teaching them certain concepts. I wasn't actually doing therapy. I was like, here's how your mind works. Here's the effect of dopamine on your brain and your motivation and things like that. And so I just had the same conversation over and over and over again. So what I started doing was streaming conversations on Twitch. So I would talk to people and I would start teaching some of these principles, almost like a podcast where I just like some random person would call in and I do like Q&A, or they'd be like, I struggle with motivation. I'd say, okay, like let's understand the neuroscience of motivation. So we'd kind of dig into that. And what I really discovered is that if you look at like people today, right? So we're being so shaped by our environment. Other people decide what kind of thoughts we have. So we're seeing, companies get better at advertising. We're seeing short form content. So other people are shaping your views about yourself. They're shaping what you think will make you happy in life. So we're bombarded with all of these images of what it means to be happy.
Right.
Then what happens is there's a deficit. So our brain notices, oh, look at all those happy people over there. I am not doing those things and I am unhappy. And then they try to sell you something. And so this is where there's a lot of very like intentional shaping of people's unhappiness and then selling people solutions. So as all of these kinds of effects are going on, we don't know how to fight against that.
So true.
And we'll say like, okay, just cut back on technology use, but it's become a part of our work. It's become a part of, it's how you keep track of, like I get emails from my kid's music teacher to tell them class is canceled. So you have to stay plugged in. And so we're not equipped with the tools to fight against this external environment shaping us.
That makes a lot of sense. And so it's almost as if there are two pieces that we need to really dig into. And the first one is the internal, and really understanding, which I think you very eloquently explained to us, that you go to school and you learned all of these sort of subsets of skills and knowledge. Like, I'm not even speaking correctly, but you learn all of these subjects, but you don't learn how a human being or how you operate from the inside out. And so I think we're all scared of the way that our environment and tech is shaping us. And where I want to start, especially given the number of people that are following you online and the kind of advice that you're giving on YouTube. I mean, millions and millions of people, Dr. K. What are we getting wrong about motivation?
So much. So in the West, what we call motivation, there is no motivation center of the brain. Motivation is an emergent property. So like if I look at you, Mel, and I say, you're motivated, how do I know that? It's because I'm observing some kind of behavior.
Okay.
So there's no one place that motivation comes from, right? Motivation is an internal drive that comes from emotions, comes from what you should be doing, comes from issues of like ego and identity, comes from issues of comparison, right? So there's so many different things that motivate us. So this is the first thing, is that motivation is not a thing, it is lots of different things. And I think the second thing the biggest mistake we make with motivation is that we try to increase it. And I know it sounds weird, but let's understand what motivation is. So Let's say you're motivated to do something. Is it easy for you?
Yes.
Okay. So now what happens is your actions, that's a problem. That's not a solution. It's a problem.
Why is it a problem if something's easy for me?
Because you are not in control, right? So if you feel motivated, you're trying to make your life easy instead of being in control of yourself. So an alternate solution is, imagine if you could act independent of motivation, even if you didn't feel like it. Because everyone's trying to increase their motivation because we're so burnt out all the time. We don't have the energy for it. I'm looking to make it easy for myself. When my body, my brain, and my mind are sending us signals, don't do this. I don't feel like doing this. And we're ignoring that. And so then what we try to do is we try to create situations that make it easy for us to act. But this creates a fundamental flaw.
How so?
Because if the situation changes and your motivation changes, then you're screwed.
So you're basically saying just take the simple thing of getting out of bed in the morning, right? So the alarm rings, and the second the alarm rings, most of us have some sort of emotion that we feel about the act of simply getting out of bed. Something we've done thousands of times in our lifetime. We know how to do. It is relatively simple set of actions to roll out of bed and stand up and start your day. But so many of us are relying on this feeling of motivation, which is, I guess the way that I would describe it, is this emotion of wanting to do something and feeling like it's going to be easy. And if that feeling is there magically in the morning, I get out of bed. But if it's not, I don't take the action. So is that a good example of
Yeah,
what
exactly.
you're talking about?
So let's like play that tape through, right? So
Okay.
that means that if the motivation isn't there,
Yes.
the first thing that happens, your alarm rings.
Yeah.
And then your cognitive willpower starts to drain because you already have to overcome something,
Yes.
right? So you start you start waking up and getting out of the bed tired
Yes.
because you don't feel motivated.
Correct.
So that makes a lot of sense. But the crazy thing here is that if we look at motivation, right?
Yeah.
So this is where, if you think about it, what that means is that your wants control you. So if I want to do something, then I'm motivated. And so that means that what I want to do controls my life because those are the things that I do. So now the question becomes, what's better, for you to be in control of your wants or for your wants to be in control of you?
I think I just got something. So you were addicted to video gaming. It's what caused you to fail out of college. It's also in many ways what drove you and inspired you to speak to all of us about the brain and about understanding your internal drivers and yourself. And if you look at it in the negative, all addiction begins with wanting to do something and allowing your wants to be in complete control. I want to eat that thing. I want to drink that thing. I want to play that video game. I want to just have sex with somebody that I don't even know. I want to ignore that obligation. I want to do this. And so when you start to live a life where your wants and your desires in the moment are controlling what you do and what you don't do, you're out of control. Is that what you're saying?
100%. Not only are you out of control, you'll be unhappy, right?
Okay.
So if we look at addiction, there's
Yes.
there's a couple fundamental problems with wanting stuff. It just doesn't work. So first thing is, if we look at addiction, we know that there are uniform pathways of addiction in the brain, and all addictions do two things. One is they give us pleasure, and the second is that they take away pain. So if you look at all addictions, and this is true of opiates, heroin, and social media, video games, they activate this part of our brain called the nucleus accumbens, which is where our dopamine reinforcement circuitry is. Dopamine does a lot of things. It also does like movement. But if we look at like our drive towards something, the nucleus accumbens gives us three things. It gives us pleasure when we get something, and it also gives us craving. So if you think about like eating a cookie, it's delicious. Let me have another one, right? So this is where we're in there's a fundamental problem with dopamine and gratifying our wants. The second thing that all addictions do is they suppress our negative emotional circuitry. So if you look at eating a cookie, if I'm having a bad day and I eat a cookie, I feel a little bit better. I'm feeling burnt out. I'm feeling tired. Let me hop on my phone. Let me browse social media for a little while. And it pushes the tiredness away for a time. But when you get off of your phone, or do you feel energized? Do you feel
No.
like now it's time to now I have the energy to go and cook a meal and go take care of this stuff and send an email to my boss? No, all you're doing is delaying your tiredness, right? And this is what we see with addictions, is that they suppress our negative emotional circuitry. And in my case, what was going on is I was failing out of school every single day. I was skipping class. It got to the point where I had so many absences that the max I could get was like a 70. If I got 100% on all of the rest of the stuff, I could get a 70 in the class. And so what we see in addiction is as your life gets worse and worse and worse, the only way you can manage that pain is by utilizing the substance, or in my case, playing video games.
Well, I think this is a really important explanation as we dig into this concept of motivation. And Dr. K, you've already said, like, gosh, we get so much wrong about it. Because I think what happens for so many of us, and you've certainly been there, whether you're at a state where you would say you're addicted to something that is slowly ruining your life, or you are just in one of these negative spirals mentally where you feel unworthy or you feel not good enough. And every day you wake up and you're like, today's the day I'm going to work on my resume, or today's the day I am going to exercise. And then you see yourself, just like you said, I was failing out of class every day. You see yourself every single day failing at the simple things you want to be doing. And so, Dr. K, what else, like, what do you want us to understand about motivation as we start to look at what I think most people struggle with, which is this feeling every day that I'm not able to follow through on some of the simple things that I really want to be doing, but for whatever reason, I'm not, quote, motivated to exercise or eat healthy or make that phone call?
It's a great question. So let's understand a little bit about where motivation comes from.
Okay.
And we'll draw on both principles of like Eastern spirituality that yogis practicing meditation in the Himalayas figured out a couple thousand years ago that have now been verified by neuroscience. So let's start with when I act, right? So you're saying I have struggle with follow through. So that's the problem with motivation, is that motivation waxes and wanes because motivation is oftentimes highly emotional. So if we look at the part of our brain that creates behavior, our emotions are very powerful. So if we look at like what is the evolutionary function of emotions, emotions give us information and they give us motivation. So if I feel angry, I will feel like doing something. If I feel afraid, it will motivate me to run away. Mm-hmm. The problem, though, is that emotions vary. That's the way they're supposed to be. They don't last forever, right? So if I can have the perfect wedding day, it does not mean that I will have the perfect marriage, right? I won't be happy for the rest of my life because I have this one perfect day. So our brain has this very natural principle of homeostasis, which means that we experience joy and then the joy goes away. And so then what we end up doing is chasing those things that bring us joy. That would be great, except there's another principle in the brain of tolerance. So if I eat one cookie, it's delicious.
Right.
If I eat a second cookie, it's not quite as tasty. If I eat a third cookie, now I'm feeling full.
True.
Right? And even then, oftentimes, if I think about getting that cookie tomorrow, it's not going to be as good as the first time I have it. So now we're kind of stuck because our motivation is going to wax and wane with our emotions. We're trying to cultivate these past experiences over and over again to try to keep us motivated, and it just doesn't work. So what can we do? This is where we're going to focus on a principle from kind of Eastern philosophy called karma fara. So karma is action, and fara means fruit. So there's a really simple principle that the more that you devote yourself to your actions instead of outcomes, the more easy your life will be, and the more you will be in control of your behavior. Now, this may sound weird because oftentimes in life, we are conditioned to focus on outcomes. So I don't care how much you know, I care what your GPA is. I don't care how healthy your company is, I care what the stock price is. So in our life, the way that our life is structured right now, we're all focused on outcomes, we're focused on goals and things like that. And everyone may think, well, yeah, duh, right? Like that's the way that it should be. But if you stop and think about it, we have a society that is increasingly focusing on outcomes, and we also have a society that the human beings are increasingly burnt out and lack motivation. And those two things are tied. So let's understand a little bit about why. So if we're not going to focus on outcomes, then how the hell do we get motivated, right? So let's understand another thing about the brain. So our brain does this thing called an action success calculation. So what it does is anytime we're thinking about doing something, our brain knows, okay, what's the likelihood of this to succeed and what's the likelihood of this to fail. And the problem is that if you're trying to cultivate motivation and you put in a lot of work and we're focused on the outcome and things don't work out, then I won't reinforce the behavior. Right? So if I say like, I'm going to study really hard for a test and I don't do well on the test, what does my brain learn about the value of studying?
That it doesn't help.
It doesn't help.
So is this one of the reasons why so many of us give up either going on a healthier diet or going to the gym and working out because you're not seeing the results? So you start to go, this isn't working.
Absolutely. So absolutely. Right. So this is a really fascinating principle from motivational interviewing. So if we look at behavioral change. We have one evidence-based technique that helps people change their behavior, which is something called motivational interviewing.
So what is motivational interviewing?
It is a way to talk to people that increases their motivation.
Oh my God. So can we use this with people in our life too, not just with ourselves?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so we're going to learn,
K.
not just with people in our life. I mean, I'd say we do it in psychiatry with other people. The beautiful thing is you can do it with yourself.
Oh my God, let's go.
Okay. So let's understand. So this is the beautiful thing about motivational interviewing. We figured out that most human beings are conflicted. Okay. So I want to go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. Now, before I go to the gym, the pain of going to the gym is a hypothetical. The pleasure of staying home is also a hypothetical, right? So when we start out, neither of these two things are realities. So I think about the gym. I think here's the cost, here's the benefit, but it's a hypothetical, right?
Right, because I haven't gone. So
I haven't
I'm
gone.
just making it all up
So
in my mind.
as I go to the gym, what happens to the pain induced by the gym?
Lowers because I'm going in, right?
On the contrary. So
Okay.
when you go to the gym, as you start going, as you move towards the thing that is difficult, the hypothetical pain becomes real.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right?
You're right.
So as I actually start, I can think about working out. That's not painful. Actually working out, huffing and puffing, I want to stop. My body's like, don't do this. My knees are hurting. The pain actually increases. So anytime we move towards an action, the pain increases.
Right.
The reason we want to engage in the action is because at the end of the pain is some kind of pleasure, right? There's some kind of outcome that we're devoted to.
Yes.
And then we hope that the pain will be worth the pleasure. But our brain doesn't see it that way. What our brain sees, and you'll notice this if you're kind of like, thinking about something in your life where you think about doing something and you know it's going to be painful, but when you start to do it, it's actually painful and it actually decreases our motivation. So moving towards our goals oftentimes comes at a cost before a benefit.
That makes a lot of sense. So just so I can break this down so everybody's tracking, intellectually you can know you want to do something, but you are going to think about what it's like to get out of bed, or think what it's like to go to the gym, or think what it's like to work on your resume, right? And because it's going to require you to move toward the pain before you get the payoff, motivation decreases as you move toward this thing that you really want to do.
And
Got it. Okay.
Absolutely, right? And this is also presuming that the reason for your motivation is the positive outcome, right? That's why we're motivated. Because
Right.
I want to be healthy. I want that sexy
Right.
beach bod.
Right.
But the problem is that when we actually engage in the behavior, when I go to the gym, I don't get a sexy beach bod.
No.
So then my brain is looking at this and it's saying, wait, what the fuck?
Yes.
Why are we doing this?
Correct.
This is just pain. There's no benefit.
Yes.
This is dumb.
Yes.
And then we wake up the next day and we're like, our brain is like, don't do that thing. And then
Yes.
we all get confused. This is why we need to separate ourselves from the outcome, because our brain makes this calculation and says this pain in the gym today is not worth the payoff today, obviously, right? And then it's going to turn around and it's going to say, don't do this thing.
What's so fascinating is you are revealing the mechanism internally that's at play that most of us are unaware of. And so we are engaged in all of this sort of like mind battles with ourselves to try to force we're calling ourselves lazy. We're saying that we're this, like, why can't I do this? When you're simply saying, honestly, this is how your brain works. You're not going to see the result right away. You're wired to move away from the pain. And so you cannot focus on the result because that is not going to get you through this little like contradiction in your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully said, right? So what I would say is we are spending our whole lives swimming upstream. Instead of understanding our motivational circuitry, we are trying to conquer it. Instead of utilizing it, we're trying to fight against it and overcome it. So instead, understand how your motivation works, and then you can craft your life so that like action becomes easy. And outcomes will improve too. There's like tons of data on this. So now let's start by understanding that I have this positive goal that comes with a reward, but when I think about working on my resume or going to the gym, I'm looking for that positive reward at the end. I'm not really anticipating the pain, right? So instead, what we want to do is we actually want to let go of that goal. And in motivational interviewing with someone who's addicted to alcohol, here's how this looks. So people will say, I want to be sober for a year. I will say, you can't be sober for a year. It is impossible to be sober for a year. Literally, you cannot do it. People will be like, what on earth are you talking about? You can't be sober for a year. If I said, Mel, get up right now and be sober for a year, could you do it?
I don't know. I don't know.
Sober for a year is not an action. You can't do it. It is not an act. Do you get that? It is an outcome.
Oh, hold on. Okay. Because you're right. When you said be sober for a year, my little brain went, 365 days, not drinking, okay, box check, box. And I jumped to, I accomplished it. I totally fell into your trap, Dr. K.
Absolutely, right? So if you think about it.
Well, I do want to break it down because I think the person listening and myself, we are so hardwired to think about the things that we want that you're trying to get us to understand that we've got to interrupt the way that our brain jumps to the end and start to think a different way to make this work for us. Is that what you're saying?
100%.
Because I think like half the people listening are probably going, well, I'd like to find a significant other. I'd like to lose weight. I'd like to have $1 million in the bank, all goals and outcomes. And that is what is keeping, you're basically saying that kind of thinking keeps you stuck swimming upstream and not able to activate what you need in order to act in the way that you need to act.
Beautifully said. So I'd love to add a couple different points
Please.
to that. Let's just like tunnel down into that. Okay. So now remember that if I go to the gym, you asked about follow through. So if I go to the gym, it's painful. I don't see the yield today. So then where does the motivation of going to the gym come from? So the motivation of going to the gym comes, you wake up one day and you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, I'm tired of looking like this. You're driven by negativity.
Yes.
So this doesn't work. So when your drive to go to the gym is pain.
Yes.
Right. So like, I don't like the way that I look. I'm unsatisfied.
Right.
Our brain gets confused because we're moving away from pain into pain. And our brain is like, this doesn't make sense. So this is why people don't have follow through. They pendulum. I'm going to the gym this week. I'm not going to go next week, right? Because you're always listening to your negative part. You're saying, I'm unhappy with this. I'm unhappy with the amount of money I make. I am trying to resolve my unhappiness by engaging in, I'm unhappy with the amount of money I make. So I'm going to work harder at work, which is not a pleasant experience. So we keep on ping-ponging between like negativity and negativity.
This actually makes a lot of sense. I was with somebody last night who has been in a job for 2 years where they keep promising promotion. This person keeps delivering what they're supposed to do, and it's not coming.
So,
and there's a lot of like, I can't stand this situation, and yet I don't know what to do about it. 1 week I want to quit. 1 week I'm working harder. And it is this pendulum thing that you see. And from the outside, you go, why don't you just get another job? But from the inside, you really do see somebody trapped between one situation that's painful, which is trying to double down in a job that's not working, versus the other situation that's painful, which is organizing your resume and putting yourself out there and looking for a job. And so that to me makes a lot of sense as to why we swing between these spurts of exercising and not, eating healthy and then not, drinking and then not.
Absolutely. So if you look at the mechanism of that, and that's a beautiful example, what we find is there's no actual fluctuation. You are following through 100%, which I know sounds weird. What you are following through with is you are always moving away from your negativity. Right? So on this particular day, I want to be recognized. I don't like being unrecognized. I feel undervalued. I'm moving away from my undervalued. And then on the next day, you're moving away from something else. So you keep on running away from the negative things in your life and you stay stuck. You are still being controlled by those desires all the time. So consistency doesn't come from obeying whatever emotion you're feeling in the moment, right? Like that makes perfect sense. We just don't realize, we think about that in terms of things like love, right? So like,
right.
Oh, today I fell in love, tomorrow I fall out of love. Fair enough. We don't think about that in terms of professional life, right? That it's all just listening to your circuitry instead of your circuitry listening to you. The point of the human body, the human brain, and the human mind, these are all instruments to serve you. You don't exist for their benefit. They exist for your benefit. My arm, my tongue does not dictate what I do with my life. And yet we let our brains and our mind dictate what we're doing with our life. It's absurd. The key is to focus on the action, not the outcome. When the mind thinks about action, the outcomes improve. And when the mind thinks about outcomes, sometimes you get there, sometimes you don't. You get into this motivational problem.
Okay.
So kind of going back to my life, I decided I'm going to apply. That's what I'm going to focus on.
And you're talking about the fact that over the course of 3 years, you applied to 120 medical schools until you got in.
Until I got in, right? So, and people think like, oh, doesn't the first 10 failures weigh on you? Don't the next 10 failures weigh on you? Because that's how most of us live our life, right?
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is if you think about it, what is the difference, Mel, between applying for to the first medical school and the 100th medical school?
Well, when you think about the actual action, there is zero difference because you are filling out paperwork, you are organizing a bunch of stuff, and you're hitting submit.
So then where does the difference come from? You're 100% right.
Your emotion and the stories you tell yourself about the difference between the first application and the 100th.
So I want you to think about this. The action is exactly the same. The only thing that is holding me back is the weight in my mind that I have failed 99 times before. That is not reality. That is a thought. in your head that is telling you that you have failed 99 times. And as long as that is the way that your life is working, you will never be in control. Because if my mind wakes up, some people say 20 is too much. Some people say that 20 failures or 20 denials of a job, I feel weighed down. For some people, they can tolerate 40. For some people, they can tolerate 60. And the people who quit after 20 look at the people who try 60 times and they say, I wish I could be like that. I wish I could follow through. I wish I could have more discipline. They're all doing it wrong. Each action that you take in life is individual.
100%. I'm constantly astonished by the number of people who write in because they feel like they're either too young or too old, right, to do the things that they want to do. And for me as a 56-year-old woman who launched this podcast 18 months ago, I just go, well, I just put my head down and just focused on the simple things every single day that lead to launching a podcast. And all of that garbage that you're telling yourself, like I'm too young or I'm too old or I'm too this or I'm too that, it's complete fiction. And the action is actually the only way that you prove that crap in your mind is a lie.
Yeah, I mean, beautifully said, right? So, and I think the challenge is that we are so conditioned to thinking that our thoughts are reality.
So how do I use motivational interviewing to tap into this wiring inside me in an effective way, Dr. K?
So great question. So if you want to be consistent every day, step number 1, abandon every day.
What?
Abandon every day. You can't do something every day. Focus on today.
Okay.
You see how deeply it is?
Yes, I see that I'm screwed.
So I'll give you a great example. So when we think about every day, successes become failures in my mind. So if I say to myself, I'm going to meditate every day, and I meditate for 39 days, and day 40 rolls around, did I meditate every day, Mel? Have I succeeded in my goal?
You did for 39 days.
It's still a failure.
Because you didn't do it on the 40th.
So now I'm looking at 39 days of success and I'm calling it a failure because I didn't do it on day 40. Crazy. I work with people who are addicted to substances, right? So my day job was an addiction psychiatrist. And these are people who will be sober for 48 days and then they will have a relapse. And then this is no longer sober. It becomes binary. And then what does the brain do? The brain says, what's the point of resisting alcohol for 39 days if we're just going to drink on day 40? We demotivate ourselves. So what we want to focus on is the action. Focus on the present. Focus on doing the thing.
And so if you're waking up and you want to use this tool in your life and there's something that you would like to make more consistent, which is still not a thing, because I see how quickly I default to, I want to do it every day. I want to be more consistent. I want to lose the weight. I want to make more money. How do I use this technique to get myself to focus on what I need to do today, Dr. K?
A couple of very good things that you can do cognitively.
Okay.
The first is focus on the negative. Anticipate the negative.
Meaning what?
Meaning that if you're thinking about going to the gym, let's say you want to go tomorrow, right?
Yep.
So what you want to do is tomorrow when I wake up, I'm not going to feel like going to the gym. Mentally prepare for the difficulty.
Okay.
So there are studies that show that predicting or anticipating the difficulty is a very, very important part because then you're not caught off guard by it, right? You're not thinking, see, when everyone thinks about going to the gym, they're thinking about the positive. They're not thinking about the negative. And then when they run into the negative, the pain of actually going through the act, that their brain gets confused because I'm thinking about this as a good thing, but my experience of it is as a bad thing. So the first thing that you actually want to do is anticipate the difficulty of the action that you want to take.
And that makes a lot of sense to me. I can give you, as you're listening, an example. I've been doing a lot of the cold exposure, climbing into I hate it. And I do not try to motivate myself, so to speak, or get myself all hyped up. I'm literally like, this is going to blow. I'm going to do it. It's going to be 90 seconds of my life, and I'm just getting in the damn barrel. And there's something about saying it that it's almost like this sort of internal resistance lowers. I don't know what is happening in your body when you use this. Like, I'm going to have a healthy dinner tonight and it's going to suck. And I know I would rather have a delicious, juicy, like whatever cheeseburger, but I'm going to just eat the salad and the clean protein. And that's going to be that. And that's what I'm doing. What happens in your brain when you do step 1, Dr. K, and you anticipate the negative?
So the first thing that it does is it doesn't let you get caught off guard. So you're changing your expectations from a positive thing to a negative thing. And what we know about human beings and expectations is nothing basically lives up to your expectations. So we have this imaginary capacity in our brain, and no reality will measure up to that. So the interesting thing is if you look at something negative and you say this is really going to suck, you don't want to tell people like who are getting injections and stuff like vaccines like that this is going to suck, but you can tell people, hey, this is going to hurt for a little while. You just want an accurate representation. Don't try to pump it up and don't try to let it down.
Okay.
The beautiful thing about that is that once you remove, once you kind of bypass all of this like positivity and stuff, when you actually do the thing, it's usually not as bad as you expected. The other thing that you're doing, which is very, very important, is you are taming your brain. You're telling your brain, it's not about motivation, because motivation is about gratification of the brain, right? It's like, I want to do this thing and I want to feel good. It's all about positive. It's about getting that reward at the end. It's about the outcome. We're separating, we are divorcing the action from pleasure or pain or anything. We are learning to be independent of pleasure and pain. I say I'm going to do this. That's what I'm fucking going to do. I do not care what my brain wants. I do not care. It's fine. Like, we're going to do this. You do it. And this is what happens. You're separating yourself.
Love this, Dr. K. I want to make sure you got this, because this, to me, this is something you have to understand. I even want you to visualize it. This makes so much sense to me now that you have taught us that motivation really is about pleasure and craving and drive and all that stuff over here. And you, when you say step one, I am just going to anticipate the negative. I'm going to tell myself this is going to suck. I'm going to focus on what I'm doing today. And by doing that, you are literally cleaving the like a separation between pleasure-seeking part of your brain
and pain avoidance.
To literally activating the ability to see that something's not going to be enjoyable, but you're going to do it anyway.
Absolutely.
This makes so much sense. You're basically flipping the switch on the part of the brain that activates to go, whoa, 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 whoa. Don't want you to do that. And going, I see this coming. You can take a nap because we're going to go and have the healthy meal.
Absolutely. So this is where in Sanskrit, there's also this concept of detachment or vairagya, which a lot of people think will mean like apathy and a lack of motivation, but it's actually quite the opposite.
What is detachment?
So detachment is divorcing ourselves of the outcomes of our actions. So to focus on the action itself instead of worrying about the outcome.
You're basically saying that there is a superpower in life in putting all of your energy and focus and resources into what you can do right now. And you can be committed to something in the future, but you can't focus on that. You got to focus on the actions and what you can do right now.
100%. So you call it a superpower. This is where I would say this should be the default state. So if you stop and think about it, Mel, what do you control in this life?
I control what I am going to do next. And that's it. That's it. I can't control anything that you're doing.
100%.
Can't control anything that anybody outside these windows in downtown Boston are doing. I can't control what you're thinking or how you feel. And in many ways, I can't actually control the emotions that come up because they're just rising and falling, or the thoughts that rise and fall. But I can, with practice, focus on what action I take next. That's it.
So it's crazy, right? So if you're listening to this podcast right now, I want everyone to stop for a second and think about what you literally can control. It is the bounds of your body. That's it. And I see this especially with women because they are responsible for their husbands. They're responsible for their parents. They're responsible. We put so much responsibility on women for the people around them. So here you are stuck in this world where you are trying to get everyone else to fall in line, but it is impossible. And then we get so bent out of shape to get my boss to do this, to get my son to do this, to get my parents to do this. We're trying to control everything around us, and we cannot control it. It's physically impossible.
How do I use this idea of motivational interviewing, though, to get people to do things that are hard? Give me the script, Dr. K. So if I'm sitting down with somebody that I really care about, and maybe they've just let their health slide. It's a partner that I have been with for a while. They've put on a bunch of weight. They've become pretty sedentary. I'm worried about their like happiness and just their overall state. What is the script for the open-ended question? Because a lot of us don't even know
Yeah,
how to freaking
absolutely.
open the conversation up.
How do you feel about your health?
Oh,
That's the question.
and fine. Like I'm okay.
Okay. So it sounds like you're okay about your health. Like you feel okay about it.
Yeah.
What makes you feel okay about it?
Ooh. Like now I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling like you're pinning me to the wall, Dr. K. I don't know. I've been like this a long time.
It sounds like you've been this way for a long time, so you've gotten used to it.
Oh, yes, I have.
How do you feel about that?
I guess I feel like it's going to take a lot of work to change things. I'm comfortable where I am.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying you're comfortable. I'm kind of, it almost feels a little bit more to me like resignation. Like maybe it's going to take too much work to change.
Yeah, it does feel like it would take a lot. And I've tried things in the past and I work a lot and I'm constantly traveling for work and I just don't have time for it.
And I'm hearing that, it must be really challenging because first of all, it takes a lot of work. And you have so much on your plate that you certainly don't have time for it.
Exactly.
That's got to be tough.
It is.
What's hard about it?
Oh, God, man, I can't hide from you, Dr. K. I feel like I'm letting you down because I know you would like me to do something about it. And I'm tired of you nagging me about it. And I don't feel like you understand how hard it is for me.
It must be incredibly frustrating to have me nagging you all the time, riding your ass, expecting more of you.
It is.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about how long you felt that way?
Wow, a long time. This is really good because what I'm experiencing, even though I'm stepping in the shoes of somebody, is I'm experiencing this sensation that I can't escape the truth.
And you're speaking. You're talking about your conflict. You're articulating your difficulty.
Yes.
That's what we lean into. Right? So if I come at you and you say I'm nagging you, right?
Yeah.
And then I say like, yeah, that's got to be hard. So like I don't say it's for a good reason, right? We default to like it's for a good reason. It's because I love you. Like we got to do it because of X, Y, Z. I mean, beautiful words. And by the way, that's a very real conversation. If people were listening, I'm sure they felt it, right? Because that's what it's like. You don't realize how hard I work. Oh my God. Powerful statement, especially in a relationship.
What are you looking for in terms of the moment where it breaks open, or are you not even looking for that? You just want somebody to...
Oh, we're halfway there already.
We
it's
are?
Like absolutely, right? Because now we're talking about your difficulty. So now I ask you, like, it's got to be so hard to do this too, because you're doing this, I'm riding on your ass. That must be so difficult. What's that like? And we keep on digging in, because here's the problem. When our mind has difficulties, we try to push them away. We try to conquer them. But there's a very simple principle of like psychology, which is that which stays within the mind will grow over time. So what do we know is that when someone gets traumatized, they keep it on the inside and it compounds, it expands over time. So what's our treatment for trauma? Anything that you vent from the mind will decrease in the mind. The energy of it literally goes away. So when we do like therapy for people and we're talking about how hard it is to struggle with alcohol, how hard it is to go to the gym, all of that difficulty almost gets vented. It's bizarre. We come to accept it for what it is instead of trying to conquer it, instead of wishing it was a different way. It is hard. Being married to me is difficult, Mel, right? And I'm admitting that too. That's not usually what we do. That's not what parents do. They don't talk to their kids and say, wow, it must be hard having me as a parent, not understanding why you play video games, not understanding why you won't go outside. I don't understand. Same conflict.
Right.
Exactly the same, that your parent doesn't understand, your husband doesn't understand, your wife doesn't understand. So start by engaging in understanding. Start by repairing this. Start by helping me, who is nagging you, understand. And once I understand, and once you feel like I understand, then you will actually listen to me.
And what do you say to somebody once it gets to that point where you've had this realization as the nagger, right? that, holy cow, like it's got to be difficult to be you. How do you open the door for how can I help you, or what do you need? Or do you even want to do something about this?
Very good, right? So those are that you did a beautiful thing in your mind. I don't know if you noticed this, but you rolled back where you were heading. So how can I help you presumes that you want help. And you ended up with, do you even want to do something about this? So that's the beautiful thing, right? So if I jump to how can I help, we haven't agreed that you want help. Now I ask you point blank, do you want to change this? And then the person much more likely to say yes. And now you have done it. Because now they used to say no. Now they're saying yes. I do want to do something about it. Now the motivation is coming from them. So instead of pushing them, you create a vacuum. And anytime you create a vacuum, there's a negative space and they will be pulled into that space. That's the big thing that we don't understand about cultivating motivation in other people. We need to give them space, not push. Anytime I push a human being, they will resist. That is human psychology, psychology 101. It's why we do this reverse psychology and stuff like that. You'll see it in your kids. Put on your jacket, then put on your shoes. No, I want to put on my shoes, then I want to put on my jacket. We want to flip it around. Which one do you want to put on first?
You're a genius.
I don't know if I'm a genius. I've had teachers who are geniuses.
So what is it, if you had to summarize it, Dr. K, that really keeps us stuck?
I'd say the main thing that keeps us stuck is that we are controlled by our mind. So then if the mind wants to go this way in one day, and it's not stuck, it is moving back and forth.
So say that again, because we do use the word, I feel stuck, but you're saying that's actually the wrong word and it's inaccurate.
Yes. So a lot of times, like when I work with people who are like stuck in life, okay? So they'll say like, I'm stuck and I have no motivation. This is incorrect. It's not that you have no motivation. It's that you have a very powerful motivation to not move. Right? So if you try to move, what happens? A pile of resistance arises within you that has been dormant. And it says, don't go outside. Let it go. Don't pick the fight. Walk on eggshells. Don't piss off your boss. Just fucking stay there. Stay seated. Don't do anything. That's powerful motivation. It's not a lack of motivation. And now I think that my cup is empty when it's actually full and I keep on adding water to it and it spills all over the place because I misdiagnosed the problem. Proper treatment comes from proper diagnosis.
So for anybody that's stuck, the first thing you just revealed is you're actually not stuck. You're highly motivated. You're in conflict. And what is the next thing you need to do? If you don't want to stay in that conflict with yourself where I'm motivated not to make waves, I'm motivated not to go to the gym, I'm motivated to not try to fix this thing and just stay pissed off where I am, what is the next thing once you realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm not stuck. I'm like in this highly negative motivated place.
So the beautiful thing is that everyone assumes there's a next thing.
Uh-oh.
So science even tells us, and this is what the yogis tell us, that awareness precedes control. So technically, all you need to do is be aware of the conflict. So if you look at the actual, I know this people are going to not believe this.
Everyone's like, Dr. K, I don't want to know this. Okay, keep going.
But
we're aware.
We're going to give you neuroscience research to back this up.
Okay,
so
let's hear it.
Awareness, technically, all you need is awareness. So let's understand the experience of someone who is stuck. Okay, so you want to do something and something arises within you. You get caught off guard. Right? This is a positive thing. This would make me feel good. I went on this date. I don't even feel good about myself. I'm lonely. Let me go out and make friends. I go outside. Now I'm socially anxious. I don't want to be here. I'm burnt out. I'm an introvert. Let me go back home. So we're just getting ping-ponged around by ourselves. And we delude ourselves into thinking that going out is going to fix our loneliness. We don't think about how it's just going to increase my social anxiety. This is what stuckness is. It's a lot of irrelevant movement. So awareness is the most important thing. And this is what we see in motivational interviewing. This is what I see in patients. See, once you understand something, then the body and the brain will act normally. The whole problem is that, when we focus on addictions, for example, we focus on insight. We focus on helping people understand what is the consequence of your addiction. It is an internal understanding. Like, so if I ask you, Mel, like, if you touch a hot pan and you get burned, you understand that this causes pain.
Yes.
The problem is that for many of our behaviors, we don't actually have a good understanding of what the consequences are. We're confused because we're like, why do I keep drinking? Why do I never go to the gym? This causes me suffering. But the reason you keep doing it is because you're fucking motivated to do it because of something else that you are ignorant of.
Right.
Right? So everything that we do is driven by our motivation, and we are ignorant of that fact. So awareness is technically enough. There's also a really fascinating study about the anterior cingulate cortex, which shows that what we perceive as willpower, technically in the brain, this is going to sound kind of confusing, is monitoring of conflict. So anytime our brain is monitoring a conflict, this is the same thing as willpower. We think about willpower as overcoming a conflict, but technically, if you look at it, the part of the brain that exerts willpower is a monitoring of conflict. And I know this sounds weird, but I want everyone who's listening to really pay attention to this. I want you to really think about this. When you are trying to exert willpower, there is a struggle. And the moment that you fail, you stop paying attention to the conflict. If you really pay attention, you will find that as long as you are conflicted, the willpower is active. That's why you're conflicted. But the moment that you give up, the moment that the willpower wins or loses, the conflict disappears.
So the only way that you can actually increase your willpower is by forcing yourself to do things that make you stay in conflict. So if you force yourself to go to the gym today, if you force yourself to not have a drink at happy hour, if you force yourself to sit in the stacks in the library and study chemistry for 2 hours, even though you don't want to, even though it's hard, even though it's painful. I think about this when I climb into the ice barrel. I hate doing it. Mm-hmm. It takes, I feel that conflict that you're talking about in my body and brain as I'm walking to the barrel, as I'm taking off my sweatshirt, as I'm stepping into the icy cold water. I freaking hate it. And the conflict itself and that wrestling with it is what's making you stronger. Isn't that right?
That is willpower. So let's stop and think about your experience, right? You're walking, conflict.
Well, the second I think about it, I'm like, I got to do this thing today. It begins there. It begins like an hour before I even do the damn thing.
And so then you're monitoring the conflict. And as long as you're so notice that even in your example, you didn't decide to go in. Do you see that?
What do you mean? No.
So you said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
Right.
And then you get in.
Yes.
Technically, you didn't. So what most people perceive, I know this is so weird. Most people perceive that, okay, you make a decision and then you're calm and then you go do the thing. That's not what happens.
No.
You're conflicted until it happens.
Right.
That is actually, you don't make a decision. You're just monitoring the conflict, and then the thing happens.
I just got something. I think for my whole life, I have looked at people that have discipline and willpower as people who can calmly, without any conflict, walk up to an ice barrel and calmly sit in. Or who can calmly see that it's raining outside or hailing and still go for that run. And I think that willpower means that they somehow can do these things that are very difficult without any internal friction. What you just taught me, Dr. K, is you just taught us, no, willpower is conflict and the ability to stay in it.
Yes. So once you have an understanding of something, then it's easy to do the right thing or not do the right thing. So I work with people who are addicted, right? So they'll say for the first couple years it's hard, and oftentimes they'll have a moment where they have this flash of insight. And this is a very common experience for people. Oh, now I get it. This is no longer difficult. Now I get it. This is no longer difficult. Now I get it. This is no longer difficult. That's what we should be cultivating, understanding, because once the brain truly understands the risk-benefit ratio, once it understands the consequences of your actions, I have patients, for example, who have to eat a particular diet, otherwise they get constipated. And at some point they recognize the constipation is not worth the dietary choices I make. This is just better for me. And this is what I see when it comes to eating healthy, going to the gym. It is about cultivating understanding, because then the behavior will flow naturally. So what are the ways in which we can cultivate understanding? So there's one big mistake that most human beings make, which is not dwelling after an action is completed.
And that's a mistake.
That's a mistake.
Okay.
So what we need to be doing is sitting with the consequences of our actions, whether they're good or bad. This is the other thing that we don't do. Very common in imposter syndrome, by the way, is we don't sit with the positive outcomes. So like when you do something well, when you get an A, you don't sit down for 15 minutes on a park bench and think to yourself, what did I do to get to this point? How did I get this A? What do I need to improve? What should I be grateful for? Right? Because for a lot of people who are very successful, it's constantly moving goalposts. There's no sense of gratitude. There's no sense of resting. And this is why everyone's so burnt out, because no matter how much you get, you have to do better. You got 1 million followers on Instagram. Now you need 2 million. You got a 2 million. You never give yourself a pat on the back. It's always the next thing. It's always the next promotion. We never sit with the consequences of our actions.
Why is this important?
Because there's research that shows that giving your brain time to mull on the consequences of your actions, you don't even need to come to a conclusion or anything like that. This is what's super cool about it. Just giving your brain space to process reinforces the behavior in the positive direction, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. If it's a negative behavior, it'll reduce. If it's a positive behavior, it'll increase.
So let's put this into a normal person's life, okay?
Okay.
So let's use the example of you are focusing on just taking a walk for 30 minutes a day. Today, not worrying about being consistent, not worrying about doing it for 30 days in a row. I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to take a 30-minute walk. If we do the walk, what do you want us to do in terms of to dwell on what we just
So
did?
for 2 or 3 minutes,
Yep.
sit after you're done with the walk, or even stop halfway. You don't have to do it at the end. Say, how do we feel about this? Was this a good thing? Was this a bad thing? What was hard about it? Just sit and just notice that behavior and let whatever thoughts come. And the beautiful thing is, if you do that, you'll say, it was difficult to do, but I'm really glad I did it. And that's where you get behavioral reinforcement. That's when you have an understanding. This was worth it.
Let's say the converse happens. You said today, I'm going to find time to update my resume because, that's what I'm saying I'm going to do. And then the day goes by and you catch yourself at the end of the day and you've been scrolling for 2 hours and now you're like in that mode where you beat yourself up and you're about to get back in that stuck mode. How do we use dwelling to help us wake up tomorrow and follow through?
See, the great question. So now what we want to do is, when I say dwelling, I mean awareness. So if you trigger your mental habits of
Yep.
beating yourself up, you're not actually learning. You're just going through a mental habit of like shame and beating yourself up. Repeating that mental habit is not awareness. It's actually the exact opposite. It's autopilot. So anytime you have a failure, the mind has a tendency to trigger autopilot. Shame, self-blame, blaming other people. If you're a narcissist, you're going to blame other people, right? So you have these mental habits, so we're not actually aware. So what I encourage you to do is, if you had a goal for the day that you didn't hit, stop for a second, right? Let's think, okay, what do you think about this goal? Was this reasonable to do? Where does the desire for this goal come from? What got in the way? And we know this from like business perspectives, right? In medicine, we literally have something called an autopsy, where we sit and we have a postmortem and we look at what went wrong, what went right. This gets applied in the business world, but we don't do this in our personal lives. We default to, I should have done this. Next time, let me fix it. Don't even jump to fixing it. That's too far. Hold on a second. Take a big step back. Was this reasonable in the first place? Because when we jump automatically to fixing it, we are not acknowledging that hungry part of ourself that wants to be better. And so in that wanting signs us up for like unreasonable things. So I want to work on the resume. I want that to be done. I want it to be finished. Why do I want it to be finished? Because I'm tired of having this hang over my head. I see. So your motivation to finish the resume is running away from negativity. If your motivation is running away from negativity and you sit down and work at your resume, is it joyful? Are you having a blast? No, that induces negativity. So now we're ping-ponging between negativity and negativity. And then something beautiful will happen. As you go through this awareness process, you look at this and then you realize in your mind, okay, there's no way to win this because it's all negative. So now I have a choice. Do I want to be negative for one day, or do I want to be negative every day until this gets done? And then they will finish the resume. It'll happen so naturally. It'll happen so effortlessly. And so many people, you'll understand this, that if you really look at your life, there are things that are hard for you, but one day it becomes easy. One day your mind just understands, oh my God, this is idiotic. This relationship is not working. And then we default to self-blame there too.
Yeah.
Right? So it's awareness. Hold on a second. Notice your reactions to things. Don't even try to steer yourself a particular way. And the more that we notice our reactions, the more that they melt away.
And the more your resistance to doing what needs to get done kind of melts away, and sort of the obvious rises to the top.
That is detachment. The resistance to the difficult thing, because if we think about what is resistance, it is being attached to the opposite, right? So I resist going to the gym because I'm attached to not feeling embarrassed because everyone else is in shape.
Mm-hmm.
So it is my attachment to feeling embarrassment, right? I don't want to feel it. It's the avoidance of avoidance of the negative thing is what I'm attached to. So I can't do the correct behavior.
What you're teaching us to do is to tap into the deeper wiring and mechanism of the brain and the body to have it help us move toward the things that we want to feel in our life and that we want to be doing in our lives, instead of being in a constant state of conflict with ourselves and feeling out of control. And I got so much out of this, and I would love for you to speak directly to the person listening. And there are so many things that you taught us today and made us think about differently. But if there was one action or one thing that rises to the top that you would want the person to really put into action in their life, what would it be if you speak directly to them?
Here's what I'd say. We are way too obsessed, and chances are you're way too obsessed with fixing things. You want your life to be different, right? You're saying this needs to change, this needs to change, this needs to change. But that's only one part of you. There's another part of you that doesn't want things to be different, right? That wants to stay at home, that wants to hit the snooze button, that doesn't want to ever go on a date again. And if you want to master your life, you need to take control of all parts of you. You need to understand all parts of you. And we spend way too much time trying to fix our problems without even understanding, where did this come from? How does this manifest? How does it affect me? So spend a little bit more time or a lot more time with yourself, understanding your conflict. Don't even try to fix your problems, just understand them. Where does this come from? What is this? What is the experience of this in my life? Like in a moment to moment, what does my struggle actually look like? Where does my drive to change come from? Because a lot of that crap is societal conditioning and trying to keep up with the Joneses and all this kind of stuff too. And just spend time with yourself and understanding yourself. Because the more that you understand yourself, the more you will understand, here's where the gas pedal is, here's where the brake is, here's where the steering wheel is. But without spending, see, we're looking at what everyone else is doing. We're looking out the windshield, and we're seeing everybody else driving their car, and we're not even looking inside our own car. And then we wonder, why does our car keep on getting into a wreck? Why doesn't it go where other people's car goes? I can see it moving forward. How do I get it there? So start with understanding yourself. And once you understand yourself, because you are a unique human being with a unique set of levers that control your emotions and your behaviors and motivations and all that kind of stuff, and you're trying to use other people's answer for your unique genetics, your unique circumstances, your unique karma. And instead, understand yourself first. Just spend some time paying attention. That's the one thing that needs to change. And if that changes, then you will be amazed at how easy everything else it'll be like dominoes, where once you understand yourself, then a lot of things will start going positive in your life.
Fuck yes. Oh my God. I feel so encouraged, Dr. K. Dr. K, what are your parting words?
Wow. Okay. I would say, So this is what I would say. I think the biggest mistake that most people make right now is that their shortcomings are manufactured. That you can have an objectively bad situation in life. I'm not saying that that's the case. But the biggest take is there's the actual problem, and there's the crap that you do to yourself because of the problem. Now, one of those things is actually in your control, and one of them is out of your control. The tragedy of life is that we get them confused. So I can't control whether I get into medical school, but I can control whether I beat myself up. And what is it that actually determines my success in life? It's not whether I get into medical school. It's whether I beat myself up. Right? And that's the only thing that we can control, because for medical school, someone else needs to agree. To get someone to marry me, someone else needs to agree. The world, I can't control the world. I can just control myself. And we're so busy trying to control the world instead of controlling ourselves that we end up shooting ourselves in the foot because we're controlling something that's uncontrollable. And then no wonder we're ashamed. No wonder we're behind. Because I'm trying to drive somebody else's car. It's impossible. It's crazy. So spend more time focusing on what you do to yourself.
I think my heart just broke a little, because when you really put it that way, that we are obsessed with fixing all these manufactured problems, like trying to keep up with other people or trying to drive other people's car, and we end up just spending so much time beating ourselves up. And that you said it so beautifully, that if you only really looked at that one thing, like, you can control whether or not you beat yourself up. You cannot control whether those people are going to hire you for that job, or whether even the weight is going to fall off, or whether you will go 70 days or 700 days or 70 years never having alcohol. You cannot control what other people are going to do, but you can truly wake up every day and just focus on the actions that you take, which are in your control. You apply again. You apply to the next job. You go to the gym again. You make a plan to go to that party tonight and have a non-alcoholic beer. And then you also can control whether or not you beat yourself up during the process.
Absolutely.
And how much would your life fucking change if you simply were able to focus on the actions and not be so hard on yourself? Dr. K, it has just been really amazing to spend time with you today.
Yeah, you're amazing at synthesizing information. I'm truly impressed.
Thank you. Thank you. My head is just fucking spinning right now. I know I don't need to go do anything. I'm just like in the moment with you. And I'm getting really choked up, because I really hope that as you're listening, that you take this to heart. Because what I see in everything that you're talking about is how much pain we cause ourselves, because we just don't know where the gas pedal is, where the brake is, where the wheel is. And these things, when you explain it and you go deep, but then you kind of rise up and go, no, just this is what you can do. It just feels so dumb that we are hurting ourselves this way because we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I get choked up too, because I see the real tragedy of this is that it's avoidable.
Yes.
That's the real tragedy.
Yes. Well, the real gift is that you're helping us see it so we can avoid it. Thank you. And thank you for being here with us. And please share this with people that you love. Dr. K will make a huge difference in their life. If you got something out of this, please hit subscribe. That tells us that you loved it. Please check out Dr. K's channel and his book. And in case nobody else tells you, I wanted to be sure to tell you that I love you, I believe in you, and I believe in your ability to take everything that you learned today and put it to use to help you create a more meaningful life. All right, I'll talk to you in a few days. And for you sitting here watching with me on YouTube, I just want to say, please share this with somebody. Don't just sit and watch. Please do something. And take a minute and subscribe to this channel, because it's really a way that you can support me in bringing you new videos every single day. And I'm sure you're looking for something really inspiring to watch, to really move you. So I want you to check out this video next. I'm ready to have a breakthrough.
I'm ready to help you have a breakthrough.
Why is this feeling that you haven't reached your full potential? We kind of say we're stuck. Why is this so common?
The way life is structured for us today, there is a lot of emptiness. A lot of what we spend our time doing does not build on the other moments we spend, so that we're building towards something that feels meaningful, that is substantial. The problem with being stuck is it feels very personal, it feels very uncomfortable, and it feels like it's a bit of a mess. But it turns out we're all stuck in some respect.
What is the first step, Dr. Alta, to getting unstuck?
The first one is to...
Hey, it's your friend Mel. Every once in a while, you need someone to roll on up beside you, tap you on the shoulder, and remind you that there is so much untapped potential inside of you. You know, I don't think you even realize what you're capable of. And so I'm going to start off by dedicating this episode to you and to the potential that is lying dormant inside of you, because that's going to end today. We're going to tap into that potential. And look, if you're already at a point in your life, you're like, I have achieved so much success, Mel, I surprised myself. That's how I feel about myself. Guess what? This conversation still going to ignite a breakthrough, because regardless of what you've accomplished, you have not reached what you're capable of yet. Neither have I. Or if you're listening right now and you're like, oh, I feel blah, unmotivated and unproductive. Boy, have I been there so many times in my life. I have been so sick of my excuses, but I had no idea what to do about it. Here's the thing. After today, you are going to know what to do about it, because you already know that you have this extraordinary potential. That's why you're frustrated. The issue is that you don't know how to unleash it. Well, that's going to change today, because one of the world's most respected researchers and professors at NYU is in the house today. And you will leave this conversation with a 3-step roadmap that makes leveling up your life easier than you think. Dr. Adam Alta, welcome to the Mel Robbins podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm ready to have a breakthrough.
Good. I'm ready to help you have a breakthrough.
Okay, great. So you've just spent all this time researching the anatomy of a breakthrough. Mm-hmm. And so there's actually a whole process that you can break down for us?
Yeah. So, I think the problem with being stuck is it feels very personal, it feels very uncomfortable, and it feels like it's a bit of a mess.
Right.
And that's the way people describe it when they have it, when they feel it. But the whole point of this book was to say there is a roadmap, and if you follow the steps, you will get unstuck. It's just that most of us don't know what those steps are. That's what the book is designed to do.
Oh, where the hell have you been my whole life? For crying out loud. I want you to start, before we get to the roadmap, talking directly to the person who is listening to this. And they're either listening for themselves because they're going through this moment in life where they're like, or just kind of blah, or they're feeling stuck, or they're listening and someone in their life that they love is really stuck. What can they expect to learn from you today, and how might their life change based on really learning this research about the anatomy of a breakthrough?
Yeah. So the first thing to understand is that getting stuck and being stuck is universal. It's part of what it is to be human. And that's liberating for a lot of people, because it feels like this very personal affront. You don't recognize how many other people around you are stuck, but it turns out we're all stuck in some respect. That's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand is that there are actually things you can do systematically, one after another, to get unstuck. It may feel like a mess. It's complicated. It's hard to understand how you can get through it. But in many, many cases, there is a path through, and I'm going to try to share some ideas about how we can get from being stuck to making progress, to hitting breakthroughs.
So, Dr. Alta, let's talk about what the word stuck even means.
Yeah.
So when we throw that word around, I feel stuck, I am stuck, I'm stuck in life, I'm stuck in this job. As a researcher, what do you want us to think about when we hear the word stuck, or what it actually means or feels like?
Yeah, I think there are two kinds of stuck. There's the one kind where you say, I want to be at point Z and I'm in point A and I need to figure out the path from A to Z that's as short as possible.
Uh-huh.
And the destination is obvious, right? I've got a goal. There's something specific I need to reach. It might be a job-related goal.
Right.
It might be a relationship, whatever it is.
Might be like, I want to get my nursing degree, or it might be, I'm sick of being single. Like, so that's when you have a goal and you feel, though, a little overwhelmed. Like, why would you be stuck if you know what you want?
Because you haven't been able to get from A to even B, maybe on the way to Z. So that's the one. I think that often is easier to solve. There's the other kind of stuck that's just like blah.
Yes.
I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Things just feel kind of dull and gray, and I don't know where I'm supposed. It might be your career, a relationship, a friendship. Life just feels like it's kind of been leached of all the things that make it really rich and interesting. And that's a very sort of diffuse kind of stuckness where it's not attached to one specific thing, and that's incredibly common. So those are very different. One is I can't complete this goal. The other is I don't even know which way to turn to create the next goal. And so they're a little bit different, but those both exist. And I'm going to talk about what I think best interventions are.
There are listeners to this podcast in 194 countries. Mm-hmm. And if I had to boil down the kind of universal sentiment on the looking for help or needing inspiration and guidance, the complaint of feeling a loss of direction is I think one of the biggest things that people struggle with.
I think that's right. It's an incredibly common response that I've had to this book and to talking about these issues, that the way life is structured for us today, there is a lot of emptiness. And a lot of what we spend our time doing does not build on the other moments we spend, so that we're building towards something that feels meaningful, that is substantial. And I think a lot of people feel that there's an emptiness to what we're doing a lot of the time.
So is that what we're basically saying if we say we're stuck, that we don't have anything meaningful going on?
I've been running the survey on thousands of people around the world, asking them exactly these questions. What does it mean to you to be stuck, and are you stuck? First thing I'll say is everyone says yes. I am stuck in at least one respect. And then they can articulate it very quickly. They can write to me in the response what they're stuck with and what's affecting them. A lot of them, it's very narrow. You know, I've been trying to learn this piece on the piano for the last 6 years and I can't do it, and it frustrates me every day. And then for other people, it's much broader. It's like my whole life is one big sticking point. Like I don't even know where I'm going. And each day goes by and I'm like, how was this day building on the day that came before? It's a sort of meaninglessness to life.
Yeah. Which is so overwhelming, which only makes you feel more lost. Are there particular areas in your research that come up over and over in people's lives where they tend to get stuck?
A lot of it is creativity based. So I think it's hard to be creative. You know, you're asking a lot of a human being when you say come up with something new or have a good idea. And we all assume that that's something we should be able to do. And our work often requires that of us. And so for a lot of people, it's in that domain. For a lot of other people, it's not work-based. It's about relationships. It's about being stuck in a situation where you have to deal with someone you don't want to deal with, or you don't know how to extract yourself from a situation. And then for other people, it's the broadest kind, which is exactly as we've described this. I don't even know why I'm stuck. I just know that I feel like things aren't the way they should be.
Dr. Alter, I take it that based on the research, this is something that you're going to experience over and over and over again during the course of being alive.
Yeah, a huge part of it is accepting the discomfort that comes from being stuck and recognizing that this is universal, that everyone is in this position at some point, often many points of their lives. There's this incredible research talking about how often these things come up for us, these major changes in our lives that make everyone feel stuck. Bruce Feiler has done some research looking at what he calls life quakes. Life quakes are these huge major life events that affect all of us, and we're almost always blindsided by them. And they're very often not things we want to happen in our lives.
Like what?
Like change in a marital status, a divorce, the death of a loved one, illnesses, things like that. They come up, they happen to us. And they are universal. It's part of being a human being. Some of these are really good things, by the way, but they still force you to change what you're doing.
Like what's a good one?
A good one might be like a job promotion, or you move to a new town or a new state or a new country and you're excited about it. Maybe a marriage is a good one. Having a child could be obviously a huge positive, but also brings complications and change, and you've got to figure those out. So you can be stuck by a good change too. So if your broad philosophy of life is there will be ups and downs and there will be times that are tough, then when those times happen, you don't spend time saying, why me? I can't believe this is happening. You know, there's a whole lot of sort of rumination that goes on if you are surprised by the fact that you're in this position. But if broadly speaking, you recognize that this is what it means to be human, you're just a couple of steps ahead. So it liberates you to start acting and to start making the next steps you need to make to get through that part of life in that moment.
I love that. You know, it does make me wonder though, Adam, the thing that I've noticed about people in my life or when I've been really stuck is that it becomes part of my identity.
Yeah.
And I argue to stay where I am. And so I would love to have you speak directly to somebody who may be really needing a breakthrough when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
Or a breakthrough when it comes to their career or their health. And if you're in your own head and the echo chamber and you're like, but it's hard, but I've dated all these people, but all my bosses are jerks, and you kind of have that story, right?
Yeah.
How do you get started in terms of like to even just get over yourself and the way you're standing in your own way?
Yeah, there's this really interesting paradox that when you are stuck, the thing you most want is kind of freedom. I just want to move. I want to like get unstuck.
Yes.
It turns out that constraining yourself and having very prescribed steps is really useful. So one process I use with people and with companies as well is a process called a friction audit. And a friction audit is a big part of the
Friction audit?
Friction audit.
What the heck is that?
A friction audit, when you audit, if you're an auditor and you go into the books of a company to audit the books, you're basically like saying, does this all make sense? Let me pour through each line of the books and make sure I understand it all. And a friction audit is an attempt to find the friction. So what is it that's slowing me down? What is it that's not making me move forward or that's stopping me from moving forward? There are 3 steps to a friction audit. The first one is to figure out where the friction is. And that takes a bit of doing sometimes. And even asking the question is a first very important step, because when you feel like you've just described, my bosses are jerks, things just aren't working for me, you're not being thoughtful about it. You just feel things.
Yes.
It feels bad. So the friction audit, basically the process says, figure out what the biggest sticking points are. They could be, every day there's a part of the day that I look forward to least. It makes my life least happy. It's the biggest, downward force on my well-being. That's a friction point. Or I'm trying to get from A to Z in my career, and I know that I can never get past C, because C in that particular step is a major friction point that I can never get past. It might be a particular boss I have to deal with. It might be an aspect of my job that I can't kind of refine and improve, whatever it is. If you do that process of introspecting and finding the friction point, you are much better positioned to make forward motion, because the next step is intervention. Is there a way that I can either weed out that friction point altogether or sand it down, smooth it down? And what that means is, for a lot of people, it means spending a bit of time, energy, and sometimes money and saying, this thing is such a big problem for me, it's such a thorn that I need a way to eradicate it, to remove it. And I'm going to throw resources at this problem, whatever resources I have. And so it depends on the context. But if you intervene and you remove that friction point, then you're much better placed to move forward. And the third stage is confirmation, is just making sure that you've actually done a good job.
I can share a personal story. So I was crazy stuck, probably, 2019, super stuck. And things were going fine. Like, on the outside, my life looked great. Married, long time, kids. Like, I finally had gotten to a point where we were making the money and it paid off our bills, and, we can live our life. And I was happy in the work that I was doing.
Yeah.
But not. And I felt guilty that I felt stuck. Like, I almost had this shame about the fact that I had a house, I had a marriage intact, I had my health, and yet I felt empty. And a dear friend of mine, Peter Sheehan, who I'm realizing just friction audited me, we were, I don't even remember where we were, but I was griping to him. And he's been a huge mentor and very close friend of mine. And he is a renowned business strategist. And he said, take out a piece of paper. And I said, okay, what the hell is this going to do? Because, of course, when you're stuck, you're kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
Because you're in your emotion, right? And you don't know how to get out of that stage 1 in your emotion. And he said, I want you to write down absolutely everything about your life that creates friction. That was his exact word. And so I was like, what do you mean by friction? And he said that you just feel all this resistance and negative emotion to. You resent it. You're annoyed by it. You're frustrated. It's hard. And so I took out this piece of paper at him, and it was like just vomiting on the page. I hate packing on a Sunday. I hate being away. I hate, and just the word hate. I hate how much I miss my kids when I'm traveling. I hate how much I'm working. I hate like it was just like, and the second that somebody gave me permission to write it down in that language, it just flooded out of me. It was as if the emotion of stuckness had a place to go.
Yeah.
And once it was on a piece of paper, he basically was like, everything on that list is now a project.
Yep.
You either need to remove it from your life and work, or you need to hire somebody or find somebody to do it, or you need to figure out how to do it without complaining about it. And that right there is the roadmap, Mel, because all those things that are causing friction are what are keeping you stuck, but you're not doing anything about it. And so then it became the next side of the page.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, these are things I can move. these are things I can't, so I got to change my attitude about it.
You accept it. You recognize there's not that much you can do, but you've put a label on it and you've said, you know what, some things just suck and packing on a Sunday is just how it is. I got to pack on a Sunday or whatever. That stuff is all just there and it's in a box, and not everything in life is going to be wonderful, and I'm okay with that. I will say as well that when we think about how to improve life, you described a whole lot of positives. You had a lot of good things in your life as you were going through this process.
Yes.
We often think that the way to make life better is to do more good things. You know, throw in more fun stuff. I think there's some truth to that. More good things is only better. I think the real bang for your buck in life, if you want to make life better, is to take the lows, the friction points, the things that are hard and bad, and smooth them out or raise them up if you can. I think that's where we should spend our time and attention.
Why?
Because that's where, if you have a lot of good things, but you have a lot of things that are bad, that drag you down, they do a much worse job of dragging you down than the good things can do dragging you up. We are often as good as the worst stuff that's going on. And so if you feel like your life is a series of friction points, but you also on paper have all these other good things, the best thing you can do is not add more good things. It's to take your time and attention and deal with those friction points and often your money and other resources that you have. So that's what I would counsel people to generally do, is focus on bringing the lows up a little bit rather than always focusing on the next flashy vacation, the next expensive thing that I'm going to buy. Those things will help a little bit, but they're never going to help as much as lifting up the lows so that they're not quite as low.
You know, again, a personal story. I have been shocked by how much of an impact therapy with my husband. Like, so we were going through just a really terrible time probably 4.5 years ago. And we went into counseling, and holy cow, it was like a crypt creeper digging up the dead bodies everywhere, kind of awful, painful thing. But on the other side of it, I had no idea how incredible the relationship could be.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been had we not hit that really painful moment of feeling stuck and just in a standoff. But it is hard to take that step to face the friction. I guess that's what we did. We went and sat with a therapist and did a friction audit on each other and on the marriage. And it was awful.
Yeah.
But the dividends that it pays on your life when you go through something like that, it just creates tremendous meaning.
Yeah.
So do you think part of the issue with the reason why it's so easy to get stuck is that life just kind of is the same thing over and over again?
I think that's part of it. I think the other thing about being stuck, you just described it, is that when something is a friction point, the natural instinct is to turn away from it.
Yes.
It's to say, I'm going to focus on something else. You know,
Right.
If you're having difficulties in your relationship, the natural thing is to say, well, let's just give it a bit of distance. You know, I got to do some other stuff. You know, you figure out other areas of your life that are more appealing, you throw your attention and time there. And that's a mistake, because those friction points, they kind of nag at you, they become traps. And unless you figure them out and actually deal with them, you're not going to be able to raise them up, and they can end up being problems for decades. And so I think that's a large part of it, is that there's a kind of sameness and a repetition to life. And the repetition comes from ignoring those little things that are niggling, that are sort of pulling at your ankle, saying, hey, do you want to look at me? And you're like, no, I don't want to do that. There are some other things I'd rather do instead that are more fun and more appealing. And that's why a friction audit is so useful, because it forces you to pay attention to what's not working, which we generally as humans don't have the instinct to do.
No, in fact, we not only don't have the instinct to take a sober look at what's not working, we have the instinct to turn away from it.
Yeah, exactly.
So was there anything in the research about particular periods in life or ages where you tend to get more stuck?
Yeah, so I have some research with a colleague of mine, Hal Hirschfield at UCLA, where I was 29 and I felt like I was about to be 30. This was a number of years ago now. I'm much older than that now, but at the time I was 29, about to be 30, and I felt like I had to do something just to kind of show myself that I was still just as vibrant as I'd been when I was younger and so on.
So did you feel stuck?
I felt stuck in various ways. I felt stuck. And
how so? Like, put me at the scene. I want to meet the 29-year-old Adam. You're not where you are yet. You don't have like international best-selling books, like all this renowned research. Tell me who Adam at the age of 29 stuck was.
I had just finished grad school. I was just starting a new career. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be in the United States still. I was missing people in Australia. I was single. I felt kind of lonely and unmoored in New York City. I didn't really know if I had a place there yet. And I just felt globally more blah than anything. Like things were going well on paper, but I just wasn't sure where I was headed. And I wanted to do something that kind of showed me that I had drive and that everything was working well. So I signed up to run a marathon, my first marathon, my only marathon. And I did this at 29. And Hal and I were talking about this and saying, we were thinking about the idea that the way we count using this base 10 system,
The who?
the decade, we count in tens.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So the way we count using tens,
Yeah.
we think of decades as meaningful, right? So turning 30, 40, 50, 60 is a big deal in our culture.
Yes.
There's no inherent reason why 39 to 40 should be different from 35 to 35 to 36, but it does feel different. And because of that, we wanted to investigate whether every 10 years when your age ends in a 9 and you're thinking about a new decade, does that push you to think more deeply about your life? And that's what we found. So what you find is there's a little spike in questioning the meaning of life around the 9 ending ages. It's like a little end of decade crisis. And you see some interesting things happen on the back of that. So one of them is more people are likely to sign up for marathons the way I did.
At the age of ending a 9?
At 9
like
ending
29,
ages.
39, 49, 59?
Yeah, they're more likely to be interested in things like reading books on aging. You see a little bit of people are more likely to buy those kinds of books. They become more focused on aging. You also see some negative things. If they have a crisis, when they have that questioning of meaning, you see a rise in extramarital affairs. So if you look at the data, there's a rise with 9 ending ages for those kinds of affairs. And you even see a small rise in the suicide rate. So there are profound things that happen at the end of the decade for people. And this is a time when we tend to have these little moments of questioning and when we feel quite stuck.
So is that called a temporal landmark? Where there's like this sort of almost marking of time that makes you then assess the span of your life?
Yeah, I think it's similar to how we do this thing of creating resolutions between December and January. It's a moment that just pushes us to think more broadly and abstractly. And because of the way we count, it happens to be just before those new decades.
How can you use this research to your advantage? So you're kind of cruising into the 29th, 19th, 49th, 69th birthday. How do you use this to your advantage?
Yeah, so there are a few things you can do. One thing is to say that there's something very arbitrary about picking those years. You know, you could be 34, you could be 44, you could be 54, 64, and say, this is when I want to do this little audit process. I don't have to ask myself whether my life's meaningful only once every 10 years. And actually doing it more often is better for you than doing it once every 10 years and having this huge, event where it feels overwhelming.
Right.
So do this often. Just ask yourself, maybe once a year, maybe it's your birthday, maybe you don't want to do that on your birthday, you want to do it on a different day.
I think it's the perfect day.
It is. That's what I do, but other people might not want to, have their birthday be about this process. But do it once a year.
Hold on I want to push back on that because
Please.
the single best thing that you could do as a gift to yourself is to pull out a blank piece of paper and go, where is there friction in my life? Because what I know based on Adam's research is that if I were to turn my attention to the friction in my life and make it a project to either remove it, smooth it out, or face the stuff that I do not want to face, that I know is in the back of my mind and it bugs me, and it's going to bite me in the rear end someday. If you did this, because here's the thing, I'm thinking about this list that I did with Pete. I do it every year.
Yeah.
My business, my life, very different right now than it was even like 6 months ago. And so I think this is like the greatest thing you could do for yourself is to wake up to where are those places in your life where there's like, it's almost like stuck is this signal and this flag from your internal like navigation GPS going ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
Turn toward this.
Yeah. I mean, you could do it on your birthday. Absolutely. I think for some people, it's a kind of overwhelming moment. And so they don't want to do it on their birthday if they prefer not to, but I'm totally fine with it being on a birthday. The one thing about doing it consistently every year is the list should change. If you're doing a good job of intervening, then that's a moment of confirmation when you can say, hey, look, there were these things that 2 or 3 years ago I was writing down. I kind of fixed them. I figured out a way past them. That is incredibly reaffirming. It's the opposite of feeling stuck. It's feeling that you've got forward motion. So there's great value in doing that more regularly. The other thing is, if it does happen naturally when you're 39, 49, 59, that's okay. The research suggests that to make meaning and to deal with these moments in a way that's productive, you can do a few things. One is to set yourself a goal, which is why running a marathon or an ultra or a tri or whatever, that's a good goal because it's an extended goal. It's very defined. It has steps that get you closer to the goal. That's very reaffirming. It's also about connecting with people. So one way we get meaning in our lives is to feel a sense of community, to feel a deep sense of connection with other people. And so if you can do that, if you can make sure that you reach out to all your friends that you've been meaning to reach out to, that will also be very productive on those times when you're questioning the meaning of life.
Okay, so Doc, I'm going to play the role,
please,
of the stuck family member.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been in a string of jobs that just blew, and I've been through a breakup, and my life is boring and meh is kind of how I feel. How the hell is running a marathon or setting a goal going to change my life?
So the thing itself that's not the issue. It's not that you've run a marathon and suddenly you're going to become a person who makes all their money and spends all their time running.
Okay.
That's not what it's about. It's about demonstrating to yourself through the way you're behaving certain things about who you are, that your life has a kind of purpose and that you're the kind of person who can seize an opportunity to approach a goal and to reach a goal and to succeed. There's something tremendously valuable about signaling that, especially when you feel globally stuck. So it doesn't actually matter what the goal is. It's not the goal for goal's sake. It's the fact that you are moving towards something that says, I have achieved, I have done this thing. So that's what the value of, say, a marathon is. It's not for everyone, but for some people it's very useful. It was very good for me. It did make me feel much better about where I was.
What are some examples of things that you found in your research that people would pick as a goal to signal something else? Like that I'm moving forward. I'm not going to be defined by this stuckness. Like the fact that I can say, I'm going back to school, or I'm losing weight. I'm like, whatever.
Right.
Like, if I'm playing the disgruntled family member.
Yeah.
Because I think you feel so stuck that there's so much resistance to even first the belief that it's going to change.
Yeah.
And also resistance to moving yourself in a different direction. I mean, you're up against inertia. We're talking physics here. So do you have examples of other goals that you've seen in your research or just even in the interviews that you've done for the book that really have helped people?
Yeah, and these things, because it's not about the thing itself, it's just what it signals, they're kind of like palate cleansers that get you ready to do the thing that actually needs to be done. So for a lot of people, that's a very valuable step. The things are often of one of three types. There are athletic pursuits, so something like running a marathon, running a tri, whatever it is, and that has the benefit of often getting you moving, which has its own benefits that are separate from all of this. Second kind is intellectual. I want to learn a language. I want to learn a new skill. I want to learn to code. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's something that's important to you. It can be directly relevant to your job, so it might actually push you forward, but it could just be like, I don't know how to do crosswords. I want to get to the point where I can do the Saturday crossword in the New York Times, and then you do that. Whatever. And then the third kind is creativity based. I want to paint a picture. I want to create a piece of music. I want to create a film. I want to take photos. Doesn't matter what it is, but I want to get better at a particular skill that matters to me. All of those are very valuable in showing you that you can have forward motion, that you can make movements towards a goal. It doesn't matter. Everyone has their own preference about which one works, but they all seem to work pretty well.
I can give you a bunch of examples from my family. So my husband, Chris, has completed that online fitness challenge 75 hard 4 times now. My daughter's done it twice. Both times they committed to doing it simply to shake up their life and tap into their potential. Here's another one. So just yesterday, my husband got up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to a National Park Service website so he could reserve a campsite for 6 months from now to the date. And believe it or not, by the time he logged on to the website at 6 o'clock in the morning, his top 2 choices were already reserved. He got his third choice for a campsite up at the national park so that our family can climb Mount Katahdin. Now, here's what's cool about that. We're not doing it yet. It's just something that we have put out into the future. We made it a goal over the holidays that our family wanted to do that this year as a family. And Chris marked his calendar 4 months ago that this was the date he needed to log on. Yesterday, he logged on at 6 o'clock in the morning. He got the campsite. These are all small steps forward towards something out in the future that is deeply meaningful to us, that really keeps you feeling like you're tapping into the bigger potential of your life.
Yeah.
And I want to see if I can't really make sure that for you as you're listening, whether you're listening for yourself or somebody that loves you, who's a pain in your rear end, sent you this episode because they think that you're stuck and they want to see you moving in the right direction and happy and vibrant and no more friction in your life. I want to make sure that you really get the power of what he is telling you. Because I think when you are stuck in your life, it's like being lost. And when you're lost and your GPS is not connected, you get that spinning sensation where it's like waiting to reconnect. So you don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And so I think about the goal, listening keenly to you, as if you saying, I'm going to climb Katahdin in Maine or Mount Kilimanjaro. That's my goal. Or I am going to learn how to play the piano, and I am going to even dare my friends and bet money that I'm going to play at the local coffee shop in a year. Or I'm going to learn Spanish. Or I am going to learn more about AI and get this skill for work. Like when you do that, it's as if that internal GPS reconnects.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you have put a destination point out in the future, which the destination doesn't freaking matter. What matters is that that destination signals it's time to stop spinning, move in the direction, start getting in shape to go up Katahdin, register your rear end for the AI class, take up the painting course. When you start moving toward it, it's like the road trip to a new you has begun. And it's that sort of new direction piece that must be changing something. Is that why this works?
Exactly, yeah. And so as you go through a friction audit, you list all the points of friction. The other thing to list is what are all the things in my life I'd like to be able to do that I can't do now? That's what you start picking from when you do this, because it signals not just that you're getting friction out of the way, which is really external to you. It's like saying this thing is outside of me. I want to move it away and make forward motion. This is something much more personal. I'm the kind of person who can take on a goal and achieve it. Whatever the goal is, it's something that's on my bucket list. And when you do that, then you are prepared to move forward with the thing that perhaps really matters to you in that moment.
You know, what's also fascinating about this research is it confirms something that I have certainly felt when I've been stuck in my life or my marriage or my job or with my body and my health, is that you feel like a victim.
Yeah.
And the act of setting a goal and then starting to work toward it, it proves that you're not a victim. Why is it so critical to have something meaningful that you're working on in your life?
It's exactly as you've described, because we spend a lot of time asking ourselves, what kind of person am I? And it's very disempowering to be stuck, right? You feel like you are not the best version of you. Whether it's a particular stuckness, I'm trying to do this very narrow goal and I can't do it. Whether it's I just feel kind of blah and I'm not making forward progress. Either way, you're not looking at yourself in that moment saying, I'm an efficacicious person who can get stuff done. You know,
what does efficacious mean?
I make things happen.
Got it. Okay.
I have efficacy. I can make things, the outcomes that matter to me happen. That's not how you feel in that moment. You feel kind of disempowered and powerless and not very good. And so the thing about creating a goal that's maybe meaningful to you, it's on a bucket list, and succeeding is that it tells you that you are actually someone who can get stuff done. It counteracts and contradicts that feeling of helplessness. And once you know that about yourself, you are in a much better position to try something, tackle something that's really big and meaningful, that's maybe been a sticking point sometimes for months or years, rather than being in a position where you're like, oh, I feel terrible, now I'm going to just try this thing that's really overwhelming. You're not in the best position to do that in that moment of powerlessness.
You know, I have this interesting question that I want to ask you. And I don't know if you researched this, but given that so many of us are going to share this episode with somebody that we love.
Yeah.
When you're the person that's stuck and it feels like everyone around you is trying to change you or pressure you to change or help you get out of that rut, is your own almost like fear to admitting that they're right also a big barrier? Like I'm thinking about like if you have somebody in your family that's drinking too much or that has really let their health or their weight go.
Yeah.
And admitting that it's a goal to deal with this also means admitting that other people are right. Did you see any of that sort of social pressure aspect to why people also stay stuck?
Yeah. So I really firmly believe that you can't make people care about a goal or an outcome. You can't say to someone, you're stuck and you have to care about getting unstuck. That's really got to come from the person. You can guide them there. You can show them why it's important. You can have them introspect about it to the point where they say, you know what, I'm now seeing the light. I understand why it's so important to do this. But you can't bully people into saying this thing that's sticking me is a problem and I need to do something about it. So I think the best thing you can do as a loved one, as a friend, as a family member is to make it, without being judgmental, is to make it as clear as possible why this thing matters and kind of gently guide this person along in that direction. Show them that it matters and have them answer some questions about it. That's the best thing you can do, is ask questions. Do you want this thing to change? Do you think it could be better? The friction audit is a great example of this because it means it's not about them. It's not confronting. You just say, hey, this is not about you, but tell me all the things that are kind of annoying to you right now. Like what's a friction point? And by pouring out all of those things onto the page, you then have something you can latch onto and at least say, hey, this seems like it's an issue for you. Let's work on it together. Yeah. Rather than telling them, here's your problem, we're going to fix it together, which often leads people to push back.
You do a lot of work with companies. So how does this work apply if you feel like you're on a team and the team's stuck?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's originally where I started doing this work, was with companies. It wasn't with individuals, but it was the same idea that companies, either in the way they interact with customers or internally in their operations, have sticking points. You know, every company, no matter whether it's big or small, even more if it's big, will have this series of bottlenecks and sticking points and red tape and bureaucracy they need to deal with. And so this is an attempt to figure out where those points are. It's also, when you're dealing with customers, a lot of my work is on consumer behavior and human judgment and decision making. Humans don't like stuff that's hard. And if you are losing people in a sort of funnel in your interactions with them, in a sales funnel, moving towards making a particular sale, all of those points where you lose them, you can almost always put it down to friction. Like you're asking them to do an extra thing, an extra click on a website, go to an extra page, make a phone call, make a text, send an email. And so I work a lot with companies to say, let's figure out where those friction points are and see if we can track what sort of effect it has when we remove those from the process.
Can you speak directly to somebody who feels stuck? They want to change jobs.
Yeah.
They want to put themselves out there again after a breakup. They want to really go after their financial security, but they're scared.
Yeah.
Like they're scared that if they won't find the job, they're scared that they're going to just meet somebody else that breaks their heart. Could you just talk a little bit about what the research says about why it's so important to do it anyway?
Yeah. So the one thing we haven't really talked about is the third section of the book, which is habit. It's actually doing something. It's acting. The single best thing you can do if you feel stuck is to take a minimally viable action. In other words, the smallest possible action that moves you in the right direction. Try to think of what that tiny little action would be. It might be, if you're in a job you don't like, it might be just learning what the alternatives are, making a list of alternative job options, alternative industries you might want to work in, maybe go even to the point of making a list of specific companies that are your goal companies. And then you can go through the sort of pros and cons exercise of figuring out what are the strengths and weaknesses of each one. But even that small act, doing something, moving in the right direction, is enough to signal that you've got forward progress. And then you can do the bigger stuff later on, but getting the ball rolling is the biggest trick. It's doing the small things so that you're not static. You're actually moving in the right direction.
Why is that important?
It's important in part because you're signaling to yourself that you are the kind of person, again, who can move. The same issue comes up again, but also because moving from zero to any action is really, really important in getting the big action to happen. You have to do that step anyway, and once you start doing it, you're more likely to do more. There's this classic story of Jeff Tweedy, the frontman of the band Wilco, who talks about how when he's trying to come up with creative ideas, it's incredibly difficult. And so what he does is this minimally viable action. He says to himself, when I wake up in the morning and I don't want to be creative, he writes books and he writes music. Sometimes he doesn't want to do either one. He says to himself, I'm going to spend 10 minutes coming up with the worst sentences I can, writing the worst, most boring music I can. Because what he's doing is he's lowering the bar all the way to the ground and saying, I'm going to be non-judgmental. I just need to do something. And that has two effects. One thing is, again, it gets the ball rolling. And so when he's trying to do good writing, it's more likely to happen. But the other thing it does is it's sometimes means that the things you think are not good in those moments actually turn out to be better than you think. They actually are more important than you think. And that process of being non-judgmental and just letting little things happen and not saying it has to be perfect is a very useful way of moving forward.
I love this 10-minute rule.
Yeah.
And I also assume it's going to be the worst because you've lowered the bar. Do you have other quick examples? Because I know the person listening is going to be like, okay, so what's an example in a job? What's an example with a relationship? What is the minimal viable action that you could take just to get somebody thinking? Because based on the research, without doing this, you're going to stay stuck. This is step 3.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the thing is the smallest action is the good one. One thing I really like that I find very valuable, and this is what got me unstuck when I was doing a degree I didn't want to do, was experimentation. Figure out the list of options and then start working through them. Compare them to each other. You will never know what is the right option if you don't know what the set looks like and you haven't tasted a little bit of each one. So set up that array and then spend a week on each one and line it up and do that. And maybe that itself won't get you moving forward much, but it will teach you what you do like and what you don't like, what does work and what doesn't work. And that's a great minimally viable action, is to say, I'm going to treat at least this part of my life like a long experiment. And then once I figure out the best thing forward, then I can be single-minded and focused on exploiting that one opportunity, that one thing. That's all I'm going to do. But you can't make forward motion until you know what that thing is.
Okay, I want to make sure I translate that because that was genius. Sure. So basically, let's just say your goal is to start working out. And if you take on the mindset of being curious and don't turn it into I'm getting 6-pack abs and I'm exercising 7 days a week. Create a experiment of curiosity. I'm going to spend the next month figuring out what kind of workouts I even like. Yeah. And I'm only going to spend 10 minutes every other day. I'm going to try jump roping. I'm going to try Pilates. I'm going to try a HIIT class. And if you turn it into an experiment, this is no longer about getting it right. It's about getting yourself moving.
Yeah. And you know that when you do an experiment, some conditions are going to be bad. Some things will be better than others. And that's good. You've learned what does work and what doesn't work. And actually, you appreciate what works more when you've seen and tasted what doesn't.
And I'll give you an example. This podcast is something that I thought about for probably 7 years, and it haunted me. You want to talk about stuck and feeling like you're not tapping into your potential. There's this thing you want to do and you're not doing it. You're not doing it. I was fully in that mode of the emotion around it, the excuses around it. And it really made me miserable. And it also showed up, by the way, when I did that friction list. And so if I think back, it probably would have been 3 or more years ago. I made one of those friction lists, which I do all the time now. And right on it was, I haven't started the podcast yet. So the fact that it showed up on the list meant to me that this was an area of my life, an area of potential that I needed to do something about. And I didn't start the podcast that day. I made a decision that I was going to start working on it. In your words, I turned it into an experiment. And you know, it's interesting to point out, I think it's really important for you as you listen and are a fan of this podcast to know that I didn't even really, quote, do anything for a year. I would wake up every day and I would take 15 minutes of action a day. And the first day, the action was I made a decision I was going to launch a podcast in a year or two. The next day, I simply made a list of podcasts I was going to listen to. That's it. The next day, I listened to a podcast for a little bit of time. The next day, I did a Google search and I learned about the kind of equipment that people use for podcasts. And it just went on and on and on. For an entire year, I would say that I was so busy almost doing a research project and becoming a student of the thing that I was interested in before I even did any of the actual steps of, I guess, recording an episode or figuring out what the audio editing software was. And simply researching podcasts, simply becoming a student of it every single day when I did something, knowing that it was leading toward this bigger thing, it got me moving. I didn't feel stuck again. And That was years before the podcast actually launched.
That's a great minimally viable action
So
in life.
tell us about the role of failure, because everyone's so terrified of failing at this. How do you reframe the way you think about failure to help yourself get unstuck and be successful?
Yeah, so very few failures are the be-all and end-all. It's all about framing and how you think about a failure. Very few failures mean you can never do this thing again. Usually they open up other options, opportunities, a second attempt at the same thing. And so the first thing is to accept that and to recognize that failure is inevitable. It's going to happen as you get better, as you challenge yourself. But usually that's not irrevocable. It's not the end of the world. You can move forward. So that's, I think, the first very useful thing. The other thing is to figure out what to take away from that failure. So there are good failures and bad failures. Bad failure is where you fail, you have no idea why, and it doesn't help you move forward and you feel dejected. You don't feel good about it. Good failure is saying, I've learned something. Here is what I've learned. This part of what I did actually worked quite well. Here is where I got close. Here's where I fell short. It may even be a case of learning through that failure that this is not something you should be doing, and you can quit. You can move on to something else. There's nothing wrong with doing that. There are a billion things we could be doing with our time. And if failure is teaching you something about what you shouldn't be doing, that's also valuable. So essentially the question that differentiates good failure from bad failure is, have I learned what the next thing should be from this failure? And if the answer is yes, then it's good. It helps you.
It wasn't a failure at all.
It wasn't a failure.
I love that, Dr. Alter. So I have another question for you. Who should you talk to when you feel stuck?
There are essentially three kinds of people that are very useful when you're trying to get unstuck. The first kind are people who are like you, who overlap with you, similar background, similar ideas. They kind of get where you're coming from.
Got it.
So organizations, when they put teams together, will often do this. They'll sort of knit together people who are similar. The second kind of person is someone who is completely different or non-redundant. So I see this happen when companies come to NYU to recruit. A lot of the best companies will come in and say, we don't just want, we're an organization that focuses on, say, investing. We don't just want the best finance students. We want the best 2 finance students, the 2 marketing students, the 2 French literature students, the 2 organic chemistry students, because they'll all have a very different idea about the world. And when you put those different ideas together, you get something very useful. So when we're often stuck, we consult with people who are like us, and that often further entrenches us.
Yes.
There's something very valuable in going out and speaking to people who are deliberately quite different from you.
Yes.
And then the third kind of person is the black sheep, someone who actively pushes back against you. So most of us can think about people in our lives who sort of consistently see things not just differently, but actually in opposition. They push us a little bit to sort of challenge the way we see the world. And so Pixar has done this for a while, where when they have a team of people working on a film, they will bring in a black sheep. So they might have a whole lot of people who say the most important thing is our animation. That's what sets us apart. But they'll bring in someone who says animation doesn't matter. Essentially, it's all about narrative. Let's make sure that first scene in the movie Up is the best narrative we can write, because if you don't grip people early, then we're never going to get them.
Right.
So these three kinds of people, everyone should have essentially a brain trust. So once you feel like you're stuck, you go to the people who get you. They really know you. They are a lot like you. You go to the people who are a bit different. They have different backgrounds and ideas. And then you go to the people who really push back on you. And you are much more likely to succeed in making progress with the influence of those three kinds of people.
And if I were to translate that to the personal life, right? So it makes perfect sense if you're trying to have a creative breakthrough or a breakthrough in your business or a breakthrough in the way that you're approaching a project. If you were to translate that to the personal life, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, okay, I got my high school friends and they're kind of like me.
Yeah.
I got maybe the college friends or the work friends. There's some diversity there in terms of how people think and problem solving backgrounds. And then I got to find that one outlier that just looks at life differently to bounce this off of.
Yeah.
If the person listening were to just do one thing, like what is the most important thing that you want them to remember and put into action from this conversation, Dr. Alta?
There are two things that you could do, two ways of approaching life. There are two ways of approaching a sticking point. The first one is called exploration, where you try different things. The second one is exploitation, where you drill really deep into one thing. You cannot do both at the same time. You can't both be exploring all your options and really doing as much as you can to make one particular option work for you. Figure out which stage you're in and then bounce between the two. So try different things, figure out which one is best, drill down on that until you hit a wall, and then go back to exploring again and bounce between those two phases, and you will effectively get unstuck.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I also want to thank you for listening today and for sharing this with people that you love, because what a waste it would be to go through your life and not tap into the potential inside of you. And I know that based on what you learned today, you have a roadmap to help you do that. And so I hope you take everything that you learned and you put it into action. And one more thing, in case no one else tells you today, let me be the one to say, I love you and I believe in you. And I believe in your ability to change your life. And now you don't have any excuses, because you have the 3 simple steps based on the research to plant a signal out into the future and wake up every day and start chipping away at it. Okay? So go do it. I know that you're like, okay, what next? What next? What next? Well, first, thank you for subscribing. It really means a lot to me, and it's one way that you can give back to me. It helps us bring you world-class experts at zero cost. Second, thank you for sharing this, because one way that you make your life better is by supporting people around you with information that can empower them to change their lives. And third, I know you want more incredible advice from experts that are just extraordinary. So check out this episode next.